Hey, and welcome to the Chef's Table, a weekly video series for culinary entrepreneurs who want to monetize their skills outside of the kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Evelyn. This is the place for successful women who want to live, cook, and work on their own terms. So if that's you, let's get started. Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the Chef's Table. I'm Chef Evelyn, and I'm super excited, as always, to be back with another video. Listen, I'm not playing games this season, okay? I'm coming to you with these videos every single week. If you're new here, welcome to the family. If you have been here before, then I'm glad to see you back. Hopefully you have found something that has been beneficial to you. And in today's video, we're going to talk about how to start a high-end culinary brand, okay? Because I know we have been going deep. You know, I like to do these like extensive trainings. So for the past several weeks, we have been talking about all things building a high-end culinary brand. So if this is your first video or even your second video in this series, check out the playlist that this video is in and make sure you get all caught up on all things high-end culinary brand. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, right? So that you don't miss out on these weekly trainings. Make sure you turn on your notifications. I know everybody says that, but I'm actually bringing you like the good stuff to help you grow your business. So today I am going to be talking about how to start a high-end culinary brand, okay? And it's let me say this. The steps are simple. But let me say that, I rephrase that. They're easy, but they may not necessarily be simple, if that makes sense. Or maybe I mean it that other way around. I think you get what I'm saying, right? Like, there's work to do, right? So I'm going to give you the steps, but there's a lot of work behind that, right? Not hard work, sometimes just the work, right? You have to put in some effort. So if you're new here and you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking down at my note cards, because I'm committed to bringing you value in our weekly time together, and to make sure that I'm not just giving fluff and not just filling up the internet with excess noise. So let's get into it. So the first thing that you need to do when you decide to build a high-end culinary, or when you want to build a high-end culinary brand, is that you just have to decide that that's where you want your brand to live. And you need to let go of the feelings of, I should charge less, I should do it the way other people are doing it. Am I a bad person because I want to charge premium prices? Am I worthy of charging premium prices? Who am I to charge premium prices? You're going to have to let all of that go, and you're going to have to decide that this is what feels good to you. This is what works for you. This is what lights you up. And I've said this before. I am not saying that brands with lower prices or mid-range prices or different brand levels can't be successful. We have seen what a Walmart can do. We have seen what a McDonald's can do, right? We have seen what the dollar store or the Dollar Tree or Family Dollar can do. These are huge brands, right? So this is not about you can't be successful unless you create a high-end culinary brand. This is about being congruent with who you are. This is about you deciding. This is not even about a worthiness issue. A lot of people will try to tell you, oh, if you charge low prices, that means you have low self-worth. No, it doesn't. That could be a strategy, right? But this is about congruency. And what I mean by that is, for example, I grew up middle class, maybe on the cusp of upper middle class, right? And so where I spend my time, the way I live my life, where I shop, the places I go is very congruent with that experience. So me trying to be anything less than that, I remember when I was trying to do like bargain prices or whatever, I didn't even know the lingo, right? And so it didn't make sense, because there's a culture at every brand level, and when you don't know the lingo, or you don't know the motivation for why people want to spend their money in that way, then it's hard to connect. So having a high-end culinary brand, probably for you, if you've been here and you've been watching these videos, is more so about congruency of, if that's who you are, that's where you feel good at this phase in your life. And it's not even about how you grew up, right? It's about what works for you right now, right? And so you have to decide that that's where you want to live. Anytime I get ready to start a new brand or a project, because sometimes I like to build brands just for fun, I'm a brand strategist. What do you want me to do? I'm a culinary brand strategist, but I like building brands like building hobbies. Okay, like I have so many different brands that I could pull out in and build a whole new brand. Anyway, I digress. That's not the point, right? But one of the things that I decide from the onset is, where do I want this brand level to live, right? Do I want it to be low end, mid tier, high end, premium, right? And so, because that changes the way the business is built. So the first thing you have to do is, as intangible as it sounds, is you really have to decide, and then, and decide means to cut, right? And that really means that you just really have to be committed to building a high-end culinary brand, because if you waver back and forth between different brand levels, then you're going to confuse your audience, you're going to confuse yourself, and confused minds don't buy, okay? So step number one is you have to decide, all right? So this is how you get started with a high-end culinary brand. So the second step in starting your high-end culinary brand is to, what I like to call, get the recipe. Now, obviously, I'm using food metaphors and analogies here, but here's the reason why. When you think about a recipe, most people think there's only two parts. They think there's the ingredients, and then they think there's the instructions. But there's three parts. There's the ingredients, there's the quantity of the ingredients, and then there's the instructions, right? And if it's a really good recipe, there's even a picture so that you can know if what you have created is in fact what the author intended, right? And the same thing when it comes to a high-end culinary brand. There is a blueprint, there is a formula, there is a recipe to building a high-end culinary brand. It's not something that you just pull out of thin air and slap a high price tag on, or, you know, try to use the most expensive ingredients and think that you have a high-end culinary brand. There's a step-by-step process. There's a template where you get to plug in your creativity and your expertise and your skills, but there are certain things that need to be in place, right, in order for you to create the brand that you're trying to create, right? So a lot of times I'll see people and they're like, well, I saw this chef or this blogger or this person do this, and I think I'm gonna do this. And it's like, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? You know, it's kind of like if you ever saw a picture of a recipe and you're like, okay, you know, I can make that at home, and it's similar, but it doesn't quite land. Or even if you taste something, right, and you're like, oh, I think it has this in there and has that in there, and even if they give you the ingredients, they don't give you the quantities or instructions, it's not going to turn out the same, right? So you can experience someone's brand, you can watch someone's brand, you can try to study someone's brand, and you don't know the inner workings, you don't know all the little things that they're doing to be able to do what they do, right? So the second thing when you decide to build a high-end culinary brand is you need to get the recipe, right? This is not a DIY kind of thing, because by definition, premium things, high-end things are not DIY things, okay? So let's move into step number 3, right? Is you have to invest, whether that's time, energy, resources. You're going to have to invest in that. We talked about this before. If you put 0 in and you multiply times anything, you're going to get 0 out, right? And so for some of you, you are in a season where it's like, you know what, you really need to give your brand some more time, some more energy, some more focus, some more effort. Some of you are like, listen, I have given it all the time and all the energy and all the effort. And so it's probably time for you to invest some resources, right? To really get out what you want to get out, because you've put in sweat equity. But even when you put in a lot of sweat equity, you still have to put in actual resources, whether we're talking about building a brand or building a house, right? You can put all the sweat equity all day long in. If you don't have the wood and the nails and the hammers and the drywall and the sheetrock and the furniture and the paint, you're still not going to have a house, even if you stood all day at the building site. So it's the same thing with your brand. So you have to decide which of those things, or which combination of those things, is at the point where you're at, so that you can increase the return in your brand, okay? And the fourth thing you have to do is you have to implement, because you can have decided that you're going to have a high-end culinary brand and work through all of the what ifs and should I not, and you could do all of that. You could get the recipe, you could get the blueprint, and you could know step by step what to do, right? And you can invest your resources and your energy or whatever. But if you don't implement and follow through and do the work, then everything is just sitting on the counter, right? So you could have the ingredients, you could have the measurements, and you could have measured it out, and you could have went to the store and bought the ingredients, and you could have got the kitchen ready, and you could have mise en placed everything out, and you could, have your pots and pans ready or whatever. But then if you don't actually cook it, you're not gonna get what you want, right? And so sometimes a lot of people spend their time, I'm just chopping vegetables, I'm just mise en place, and they're doing a lot of movement and a lot of energy and a lot of effort, right? But they're counting grains of salt, right? Like, you know what I mean? And so it feels like they're busy, and it feels like they're moving, and they're getting everything together, and they're doing all the things, right? And they haven't cooked up a brand. Right? So the fourth step is, once you get the ingredients and the measurements and the instructions, is you are going to actually have to do the work. You're going to have to implement. So like I said, these 4 steps sound simple and they sound easy enough, but there is work behind them. The work that you have to do internally to believe that you can have a high-end culinary brand, you're worth having a high-end culinary brand, you can charge the kind of prices that you desire to charge and not feel guilty about it. As a matter of fact, allow yourself to get excited about it. That takes work, right? That takes internal fortitude. That takes getting over self-doubt and imposter syndrome and all those kind of things, right? The second thing is, you got to get the recipe. So many people are wanting people to give them the recipe for free. That's not how this works, okay? Cookbook authors sell their cookbooks, right? Or they're trying to piecemeal together the recipe, and they're wondering why they're not getting the results. And let me pause right here on this recipe. For my food bloggers out there, or anybody that has seen this on the internet, I'm always amazed when someone puts up a recipe, right? And, let's say they made it with all-purpose flour. And then somebody comes along and says, oh, I took out the all-purpose flour and I replaced it with cornstarch, and my recipe didn't turn out right. And it's like, right, because the recipe wasn't written for cornstarch. It was written for all-purpose flour. You know what I mean? And so that's what happens when you try to piecemeal it together, and you're just trying to, you can't cheap your way to a high-end culinary brand. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's not congruent, right? And then the third thing is, you're going to have to invest time or energy or resources, or all 3, right? And you need to know where you are in that process, right? Is it that you've invested all the resources you need to, but you haven't implemented the things? Is it that you haven't invested anything because you've been trying to DIY everything and you're wondering why you're not getting no return out of that? You know where you are in that process, and be honest with yourself. It's not judgment, right? It's not judgment. Maybe it hasn't been the time. Maybe you haven't been able to do it. We'll figure out a way. That's part of entrepreneurship, right? That's what I'm going to tell you. So whatever you need to put in to get out what you want to get out, then you need to do that, right? You cannot say you want to bake a chocolate cake, but you don't want to put chocolate in it. Not gonna happen. Okay. And then the fourth thing that we talked about was that you have to implement. You're going to have to do the work. So you can be gathering ingredients and washing dishes and chopping vegetables and mise en placing and getting everything together. But then if you don't actually go through and work through that recipe to build that high-end culinary brand, you're just going to have a whole bunch of fancy ingredients sitting on your countertop. So I hope that you found this video helpful. I hope it's really made you think about where you are in the process, what you need to do. If you're at step 1, no judgment there, because once you decide that you're going to do whatever it takes, it's all downhill from there. It gets easier and easier, right? So if you haven't already, make sure you hop on over to Instagram and follow me at Chef Evelyn. And if you haven't joined the Chefpreneur Society, it is my community of women culinary entrepreneurs, and you can join that simply by going to chefevelyn.com/society, because you want to stay up to date, because I'm going to be doing a multi-day intensive for those of you who want to build a high-end culinary brand in the not so distant future. So we've been talking about this since the beginning of this year. We've been talking about a high-end culinary brand, and so I'm going to be doing an intensive, right, several days to help you get on the path of building your high-end culinary brand, and you don't want to miss it. So until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Peace. Now, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you never miss a new episode. And to see what I'm cooking up behind the scenes, make sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Chef Evelyn. That's all for today, and I'll see you next week. Peace.